So I was thinking, it's almost like the only way you can speak against the evolution theory is to actually be outside the biological scientific community.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's a herd mentality going on, and if you speak against it from within, you get kicked out, and you're no longer part of the club. So it takes someone like you, who has a scientific background but is not necessarily from the biological scientific community, to actually speak up against it without fear of being ridiculed or being kicked out of a club that he doesn't belong to.
Absolutely. It is like somebody, for example, in 1960s communist country, and then somebody would raise his hand in the Communist Party and say that communism is not good. What do you expect?
These guys got executed. That was a different story.
This will be the last session he will attend, obviously. And obviously it does not even count as a good argument that somebody else will stand against him and tell him, show me somebody else in the country who is speaking against communism. Because guess what? When you're in a communist country, you cannot speak against communism. So this is what's happening in the biological scientific community. And people are looking at it. It's like 97, 98, 99% of the biologists are saying that they are pro-evolution. But guess what? If you speak against evolution in this tyrannical environment,
you're no longer part of the community.
You will not get your master's degree. You will not get your PhD degree. Nobody will accept your papers. They will mark anything that you do as pseudoscience, because you have this methodological naturalism overarching criteria that says that if you put together a theory, and this theory cannot, will only invoke materialistic or physical processes as the mechanism that will make it fulfill its predictions, if you do not fulfill this criteria, you are classified as pseudoscience. In one discussion that I was having lately, somebody said, you're an engineer, and guess what? He quoted this thing.
Most tend to come from an engineering background.
He quoted this thing that was really ridiculous, which is called the Salem hypothesis. And what this says is that it comes in two forms, and one of the forms is, if there is somebody who is of a scientific background who is arguing against evolution, then most probably, statistically, he will be an engineer. And even more, an electrical engineer or computer scientist.
Specifically.
Yes.
Very interesting.
And then somebody even advanced it, that if he's not an engineer, he's probably a medical doctor.
This is really fun.
And the other way, the other formulation around is that not only a matter of correlation, is that the more stronger statement that it's like if you are an engineer or a medical doctor, you have a predisposition to believe in creationism and hence to reject evolution. And then I go, well, guys, if you think that engineers and doctors, the two professions that have advanced humanity through history,
I'd say engineers are probably the most logical people too.
these are the two professions. If there is a civilization, it means there is engineering. If there is a civilization that is surviving, there is medicine. No medicine and no engineering, it means you have nothing. You have people who are either diseased or disabled, or you have people who have no connection to civilization whatsoever. How come pharaohs built a civilization? They had civil engineers. they had people who can do canals and who can do dams and who can do this and that. The Chinese, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, etc. Those were... How are the ages marked? This is the Stone Age. This is the Bronze Age. You know? This is where iron came into. They are referring to materials because those materials were used then by engineers to create tools. So if you're telling me that the people who not only understand science but are able to use science to benefit humanity, what is the definition of an engineer? An engineer is somebody who can use science and art to exploit human and physical resources for the benefit of the human society. This is what an engineer is. Engineering is the use of science, art, human and material resources and financial resources in a practical way to serve humanity. This is the definition of engineering. So if you're telling me that the people who not only understand science but who can also apply it, and the people who not only understand science but can also use it to cure people, if those two professions are predisposed to creation,
then you need to reconsider.
You need to reconsider if evolution makes sense at all. Because it strikes me, when I discuss with people who are pro-evolution, who are scientists, that they will tell you these things that they cannot defend. He will use this formula to make a calculation, but he cannot defend the formula. If I tell him the formula is defective, this formula has no connection to reality, he doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. He doesn't see this connection. It is a theoretical formula. But the way biologists and evolutionary biologists, they are given these things as givens. They have a connection to reality because they have a lab. But it is not the problem in the results. The problem is not in the data. The problem is in the way you see the data. You are indoctrinated. They laugh at creationists, that creationists are theists who are indoctrinated from childhood into believing in God and believing in the supernatural and what they would call myths and what they call fairy tales, etc. But the reality is that evolution is an indoctrination system, starting from the school system where it is now being spoon-fed into little people, and into high schools, and into undergraduate courses, and unfortunately into postgraduate and postdoctorate, etc., where if you do a research, the only acceptable explanation will be a methodological naturalism thing that will be pro-evolution. If you don't do it, you're not going to be accepted. And the very existence of this Salem hypothesis is really not only ridiculous, but also pathetic.
It's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, it's very so the question, why does somebody like me has to do this? Why you will find many engineers and many nuclear physicists and many medical doctors and sometimes chemists, etc., arguing against this imposter theory? It is because the guys who should be scrutinizing it are not. They are unable to. Either unable to because they are completely intoxicated and indoctrinated with it, or because if they speak out, they're afraid. They will be kicked out and expelled unless they are at the top of the pyramid.
You can't get there.
Which is very difficult.
There's no way you can get there.
And when you are at the top of the pyramid and you speak out about it, yes, you get ridiculed, but there is limits because you are already a chair of a department or something. There are examples, but very few, unfortunately. And hence, I would really like to use this discussion to call upon people who are in the engineering discipline, who understand information theory, who understand computer science, who understand chemistry, because the claims of the theory are not really biological claims. When I'm speaking to somebody and he says, how come your evolutionary theory is not about biology? It is not about biology. It is a mathematical model that is false, that claims that a random process that can be modeled by a Markov branching process, which means that the current event has no connection to a past event and will generate a future result that cannot be predicted from the previous, and it will keep on branching, and then natural selection will come and pick things, that this thing can be innovative. And this is false. And this can be proven false through computer simulations. All right? And the computer simulations that the biologists are using are developed by computer scientists.
Computer scientists and mathematicians, I guess.
And mathematicians. Of course, you get the mathematical model and you put it on a computer model and you run the simulation. And the mathematical models that
you should start forming a society that's called Mathematics Against Evolution.
I would definitely encourage something like this, and maybe this is a good point to start it. But there are people who have actually even done great work on this and proposed that the formulas and methods used by population genetics, which is a mix between biology and mathematics, are false, and not false because they are wrong. They are false because they are not properly modeling what evolution is talking about. They can be true if you are talking about adaptation, because there is something and it's being expressed, but they are completely false when you are talking about random mutation, because there is nothing and you are claiming that information is created through a random process, which is completely nonsense. And when you look at the simulations, so I have had discussions with evolutionary biologists, researchers, and somebody will throw at me a simulation that he has done himself, a computer simulation. I'm not sure if they do it themselves or they get part of their teams, like computer scientists or mathematicians that will do the simulations. But there are even some ready-made frameworks where you can adjust parameters and run the simulation. And the simulations are ridiculous. Guys, are these the computer models that you are using to say that there is evolution? They will give you this model using a concept called automata that was developed by a brilliant guy called von Neumann. And this automata is like a checkers board. And you have in this checkers place something, and you would put simple rules, okay, that what is the color of the next checkerboard given the colors of the nearby. And for example, you put some rules that if there are, for example, 3 blue, then out of the 6 around you, or out of the 8 around you, then the next one will be blue. And you start with a few pixels red and a few pixels blue, and you see what happens. And you give a little advantage to the blue, and then you see how the blue will become dominant. It's these kinds of games. Very simple rules, and you run the simulation, and you see it proves nothing, because you are putting a mathematical formula, and you are running this formula, and it has nothing to do with reality, where you have genes, and you have very sophisticated programs, and you have a mutation that will come into a series of amino acids that's 200 or 300 codes, and there are billions of possible combinations, and only very few of them will deliver a beneficial protein. So this has nothing to do with that completely. And they tell, we do the simulations on the computer and it works. No, you don't do the simulations on the computer. You have either you don't know what you're talking about completely, which I don't think is the case, because you're a biologist, you know what the kind of complexity that is there on reality, okay? Or you are just lying to yourself. You accept that you have limitations, that you cannot really model reality, because even if you can model the genes, you do not know if this gene changes by that random process, what will this new gene be? You cannot. We do not have computers that can do that. Okay, this gene will it produce a protein altogether? And if it produces this protein, can it fold? And if it folds, will it deliver something beneficial? We don't know. There has been a great breakthrough very lately about the Google Alpha DeepMind, which is now able to do some predictions about the formation of proteins, but about the folding of proteins that we know about. So anyway,
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since we started this segment of the conversation with a question about, or the thought that it takes someone from outside the biological community. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you doing this?
Yes, so number one, because it takes somebody from outside of it. And number two, because this thing is the theory of evolution, which is really part of the naturalist and the materialist movement.
It's part of a belief system.
Yeah. It has come so close to each one of us. It is not enough that you do not believe in it anymore. Because you don't believe in it and you're sitting still, it will be taught to your children the next day.
So are you saying that there's a systematic attack upon faith in God that's happening?
There is an alternate belief system given to people, starting from elementary education. And this system systemically bans teaching creation in schools in the majority of the countries of the world that are teaching science. And the advanced countries, at least.
What I'm trying to say is, isn't this throwing doubt into the minds and the hearts of children as they grow up about the existence of God? It's like a seed. Even if you don't talk about evolution versus God directly at such a young age, but if you just talk about evolution and you put it as an explanation for existence, without going near the concept of God and whether or not God exists, you're planting a seed of doubt that as the child grows up and becomes an adult, provided that they become indoctrinated, like we were talking earlier, it will be definitely something that will help that child, now a grown-up, lose faith in God. I just feel that they're very much connected. The idea of evolution and atheism. And I'm wondering how intentional.
This is a very good argument. So I was actually even having some arguments, or in many cases I have arguments with atheists that go like this. They will tell me, even if you disprove evolution, it is not going to prove your God. This is number one. This is one thing they say. And some of them, they even say, you should not link evolution to atheism altogether. And I will go, no, they are linked. Philosophically, they are linked. So somebody who adopts the methodological naturalistic line of thought will naturally adopt theory of evolution, will adopt abiogenesis, and will adopt cosmological evolution. He will adopt the idea that fluctuations in vacuum caused something come out of nothing, and inflation in the Big Bang, and then the stars formed themselves, and then the planets came from the stars, and life came from dust, and all without any intervention. And then we have the Luca, and then Luca progresses, and then you have.
If you believe in all of this, then why would there need to be a God to begin with?
So essentially, you end up with this. You end up either with somebody who believes that there is no God whatsoever, because what's happening is in cosmology and
or there's a passive God.
Or there is a passive God.
Sitting aside, doing nothing.
So there is this Greek philosophy God, which is this God that is preoccupied with himself, to the extent that even if he allows creation to happen, he doesn't care. There is no reason for him to ponder on anything other than his own beauty and magnificence. And then you end up with this generation that's coming into the world stage that does not believe in any purpose, does not believe in anything other than the materialistic world, does not believe in any accountability towards any
beyond the
moral system that has a divine nature, and hence is gradually the human society is evolving into a godless society, because God either does not exist from their point of view, or is completely passive because he doesn't care, or sometimes even because he doesn't know. He created the universe, and he is not even aware that we exist, because he just created this universe. He allowed the universe to occur, or he made the initial spawn, and then things just carried on, and life happens to have happened on this very small speck, lost in this small galaxy, lost in this huge universe. Nobody knows, nobody cares. We came to existence as an act of chance, and we will leave existence as an act of chance. Maybe an asteroid hits this planet, or this or that, and the strive for our survival, even on the planetary level, is something that we have to take care of.
What a sad idea!
It's a sad idea.
When I think about these kinds of concepts or ideas, it's such a sad idea to think about your existence as a human being being so worthless. I mean, what's the point of all of this? If it all ends, all of it, I mean, the entire, even if the planet goes on for another, the entire solar system goes on for another 4 billion, 5 billion years, so be it. But then, in the end, it's just gone.
Yeah.
Everything about humanity is just completely gone into
oblivion. Yeah.
Then what's even the point?
What's the point? Exactly. And you look at the whole dark and dim and miserable worldview, and you understand why is there that much depression, why is there that much anxiety. You understand there's nothing, and it is exactly that there is no purpose. This is where it starts. And since there is no purpose, there is no design, and since there is no design, then nothing will work for you unless you introduce the design. So, for example, as theists, we believe that God created the earth and created us on the earth intentionally, and he formed the earth in a way that is proportionate to our needs. هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا. Yeah. So we have the, yeah, he created for you all what is there on the earth.
In the earth.
Yeah. In the earth. And he made it in a proportionate way. بمقدار.
You can translate that too.
Yes, and everything that he does is in measure and is in proportion. So humanity in this worldview does not need to be worried about scarcity. Economics is all about scarcity. There is no enough resources for human beings. There is this scare of population explosion. Things are getting out of proportion. It's all about things not being in proportion. It's all about struggle. If you don't kill your fellow human, he will eat your food. All right?
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest, but not only survival of the fittest. It is that if it is not survival of the fittest, there will not be enough for everybody. This core belief that the earth is there by accident means that it can go out of there by accident. You're sitting waiting for the asteroid. You're waiting for this or that to happen. Maybe something will collide with Earth tomorrow. Maybe the Earth will stop rotating.
That's
maybe
why they're looking for life in space. And
yes, we happen by chance. Maybe there are other aliens that will come and take us over, etc. This miserable worldview starts from the point of having no purpose.
so much anxiety.
Yes.
So much fear.
And because you want to prove that there is no purpose, you have to show that there is no design. And to show that there is no design, you need to show that it is all random. Because random is by definition, there is no design. And this is where it is really one thing to have evolutionary or methodological naturalism as a line of thought and atheism as its belief system.